So welcome back to another episode, and I can't believe it's been 35 years since Dragon Warrior was released in this country. And this was my original copy that I picked up 35 years ago now, and it wasn't a smash hit for Nintendo and Enix back then, which was kind of crazy because in Japan it was a massive hit. They brought it over here as Dragon Warrior. It was known as Dragon Quest in Japan, and I played it, I fell in love with it, and I couldn't believe that 35 years has gone by. I even did a tweet saying, I don't think anything will ever come from this series because eventually the series would become a phenomenal success in this country as well, especially with games like Dragon Quest 8 and 11. It became absolutely massive and mainstream. And what I wanted to do today was go on a journey back 35 years ago to the past to revisit my old neighborhood and go back to the roots and the beginnings of my Dragon Quest journey. So let's get going. So many memories just come flooding back. It's almost a little too much.
Like riding your bike.
And skateboarding around all this neighborhood here. It's nuts. This is where I grew up. Look at this. Sunshine Hills. It's called. Oh man, coming back to the old neighborhood. It's unbelievable. Whenever I come here, I just get this feeling. It's like intoxicating. It's like I feel a pressure when I come here. And what I'm meaning is, I feel the pressure of all those memories and all of those good times that I had on this street playing video games and my old friends down the street and all of those great old memories. And it's so powerful of a feeling whenever I come down here and I see all the old homes that all my friends used to live in, and none of them live there anymore. And yeah, as I said, losing my mom this year and losing my dad 27 years ago, they gave me such amazing memories, and they gave me such a great childhood and such a great neighborhood to live in. And yeah, it's as I've gotten older now, hitting 50, those moments in my life are so important to look back on, and they're hypnotic for me, quite literally. Like, it's funny, right here is the old Kato's house. This is where I first saw Phantasy Star, and I've come here before and I've done this, but I really want to revisit it today. We had so much fun in this house, playing board games, Dungeons and Dragons, all of that kinds of stuff. And we really just kind of nerded out in that basement and had such a great time. And then also, coming into this neighborhood again, that was the great old Kato's house, and none of them live there anymore, which is really sad. And then we get into my old friend Andrew's house, and he moved here in 1987. And we became instant friends and played so many video games, the Sega Master System and all of that, and really meant a lot to me in my life. And so many memories seeing Link to the Past in that house for the very first time, and also playing Govelius there. So many great times. Now it's crazy to think about 35 years ago, my sister came to me and she said, hey, we're going across the border to the United States, to Bellis Fair. She was, with her boyfriend at the time.
Bellis Fair, where we make holiday shopping easy on you and your budget.
And she's like, do you want to come with us? And I was like, sure. And then I'm like, oh my God, I bet they have Dragon Warrior. And I'd seen it in Nintendo Power, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they have that, because video games would always come out in America first, and Canada, not so much. We get it months later. And so I jumped in a convertible Cadillac of my sister's boyfriend's car, and we went across the border. And I just remember, the wind blowing through my hair. It was a beautiful day. It just was such an experience. And I just absolutely loved driving across the border, the excitement, the adventure of it. And then getting there to Bellis Fair and walking in and seeing the game. And there was a kiosk at that time called Famicom Games. And there was something, I've talked about it before, and I've often said I wish I have a photograph of this, where there was a glass display case, and they had made up a diorama of Akira Toriyama artwork, and we're talking like 1989. And so I was like, oh wow, it's called Dragon Quest? That's where I was like, it's called Dragon Quest in Japan, and I didn't know that at that point. It was like really fascinating to me. I saw these little anime characters, and I'm like, oh, cool. I'd seen it in Nintendo Power, but to see the actual anime artwork. So I picked up my game, we blazed past the border, I got home, and I put it in, and Yes, this is my old house here from a long time ago now. I haven't lived there for probably about 24 years. It's just crazy to see. And at this very house, I played Dragon Warrior in the basement, and I put it in. It was 35 years ago this month, so this is probably this time right now. And I sat down, I put the cartridge in, which was really, really amazing, and I saw the title screen, and that music started, and it's iconic music now. I didn't really realize at the time that it would be so iconic. And then I started the game, and I started going through the town. I made my way to the overworld, and I got into my very first fight with a slime. And I didn't know that that would be an iconic monster for Dragon Quest, and I'd be talking about it 35 years later. You don't know that at the time. You're just a kid playing a game, and I loved role-playing games. Yes, I'd played Phantasy Star down the road at the Kato's house there, and that was groundbreaking stuff. That was groundbreaking. This was a poor man's Phantasy Star, but it was my Phantasy Star, right? It was my RPG at home because I couldn't afford Phantasy Star and I didn't have a Master System. And so I had a Nintendo. And so I got the next best thing, which was Dragon Warrior at that time. And to play it that summer was a magical experience. And the reason why it was so magical is because I didn't know any of the secrets. I had to figure it all out on my own. That was what was so magical about the game. And all the secrets, the leveling up, yes, I know. The battle music will drive a person to insanity. But I didn't care, and I spent so much time leveling up, building up my character, and I finally got to the end of the game and defeated the Dragon Lord, and it was very fulfilling. And I was a fan of Dragon Warrior, but I knew 35 years ago from my visit to Bellis Fair that it was called Dragon Quest, and I was like, oh, isn't that fascinating? So I finished Dragon Warrior 1, very satisfying, I loved it, and then it was on to Dragon Warrior 2, and a girlfriend of mine brought me over a copy one day that she had acquired from somewhere. I never asked her, she just brought me over the cartridge, and I'm like, where did you get this from? And she never told me, and I was like, oh my God. So I want to take us to a symbolic place where I had a big revelation moment to do with Dragon Warrior 2. And I've taken myself there a long time ago in a skipping school episode that I did. So let's go there right now. So it's really funny, back 35 years ago, I would always walk this way up to my local high school. I did this every single morning in the rain, in the sun, in the snow, and I'd always walk down this little path right over here. So look at this. This is like a long walk into a dungeon or something like that. My imagination was always kind of racing as a kid, and I always loved this long tunnel right here. And me and my friend Andrew would walk to school together, and we'd always walk here. There'd be so much graffiti on here back in the day, and we'd always be talking about video games or Dungeons and Dragons or the latest comic books that we were reading. And we would get to a little section right over here. Yeah, the amount of times that I would walk down these stairs is unbelievable. I had very strong legs back then from skateboarding every day and from walking these stairs down to my high school. And so what ended up happening is I got that copy of Dragon Warrior 2, and I was so excited to play it. And there was a morning, it was a Monday morning, I was walking with Andrew, we were walking down here, and I was just like, oh, I really want to play Dragon Warrior 2. I really don't feel like going to high school. And he's like, what? He's like, what are you talking about? You gotta go to high school? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't know. So Andrew wouldn't believe it. He's like, you can't just not go to school. You gotta go to school. And I'm like, no, man. I said, I think I'm gonna take 2 weeks off. And this is where I stood. And I remember I had a cigarette in my mouth and I put it out and I'm like, I'm taking 2 weeks off. He's like, you can't do that. I remember him just totally fighting against me, saying, you can't do such a thing. And I'm like, yeah, and it was so cloudy and overcast. It was one of those Monday mornings you really don't want to go to school. And so guess what I did? I said, I'm out of here. And I said, see you, Andrew. And I took off and I went home. My parents were at work. I know it's very bad stuff. I went into the basement and the basement was really cold. I'll never forget that. And I got a little blanket around me and I put in Dragon Warrior 2 and I started that game. And what an adventure. I can't tell you what I did at social studies that day all those years ago, but I can tell you that I still remember Dragon Warrior 2 and that moment I had in the basement and getting the extra party members, exploring the world, and just the music and the enemies. It really grabbed a hold of me. And then after that, obviously I finished that game, and then I moved on to Dragon Warrior 3, and then 4 was also another huge game for me. And 4 is still my favorite in the series. And the reason why 4 is like I love playing as all of the different characters. I love playing as Saloon the Merchant. I love playing as all of the other characters. And what was really amazing about that game is that all of the characters come together. You play them separately, and at the end they all come together, and you go up and you fight the end boss of the game. And there was just something about playing those different characters and then bringing them together and having a connection. Like, I actually have gone on record as saying Tornico, or should I say Taloon, is one of my favorite characters of all time for Dragon Quest. So Dragon Warrior 1 to 4, I finished here in North Delta, and like, look at this place. What a beautiful place to grow up in. I was very, very lucky to grow up here. The beautiful trees, the beautiful foliage, it added to the game. I felt like I was almost in the game. Even when I wasn't playing the game, I was imagining and thinking about the game. I was thinking about the monsters and the world and the setting and the music. And I gotta be thankful to my parents for giving me such a great upbringing where I grew up and giving me that opportunity to have a beautiful childhood where I could play these RPGs and just walk around my neighborhood in a very safe environment and let my imagination soar. And that's what the Dragon Warrior series has really done for me over the years. And one thing about this forest that brings back a lot of memories is I remember hanging out with my friends like 35 years ago, and we would get sticks and pretend they were swords, and we would be going through the forest pretending we were knights, looking for caves and looking for monsters and trolls, and we'd really let our imagination soar here. And it was really, really a fun environment to explore. So Dragon Warrior 1 to 4 was over. 5 and 6 came out in Japan for the Super Famicom. We didn't get them. Can you believe that? We never got those because Dragon Warrior 1 to 4 did not do that well, which is something you can't believe. You know, but Dragon Quest never took off over here the way it had in Japan. In Japan, it was a phenomenon. They sometimes didn't want to release the game on a school day, so many kids would skip school to get the game. And so that phenomenon never reached over here, not until Dragon Quest VIII. When Dragon Quest VIII was released, that changed everything because it finally was called Dragon Quest. And we're finally getting an actual Dragon Quest game and not called Dragon Warrior anymore. But we have to go and talk about 7 for just a brief moment. Okay, so here's my old shitty apartment where I used to live. I have a lot of good memories playing video games, especially Phantasy Star Online and the Dreamcast here. Have a lot of good old memories here. But this is, when I first moved here, I started to play Dragon Warrior 7. And the one thing I want to say about Dragon Warrior 7 is that I don't like the character design so much. I don't really, but the one thing the game gave me was like 150 hours of gameplay. There was so much that you could do in this game. It was one of the biggest Dragon Quest games of all time. And I got a lot of memories sitting in here, spending 150 hours playing Dragon Warrior 7. And that would be the final game to be called Dragon Warrior 7 until Dragon Quest VIII over here. Now I know I've talked about these stories before, I know that, but today, what this is for me, turning 50, revisiting my childhood. And that's what this is, it's revisiting where it all began. I got this YouTube show now where I talk about RPGs all the time and all the games that I really love, and I talk about my memories of it, and today was really symbolic. Like, I gotta admit, when Dragon Quest, I heard it turned 35 years old, or Dragon Warrior, I was like, oh my God. I can't believe that's 35 years ago. It made me emotional and it made me want to come here and record this all in 4K and stuff like that. So one day my daughter can see it. This is one of the reasons why I want to do this video, is to show her my passion for video games and what some of this stuff has meant to me over the years, and hopefully in life that she will get a passion that's as insatiable as mine has been for video games and for RPGs and Japanese games. I hope that she can have an experience like that as well. And these are my way of sharing my experiences with her for the future, because right now she's 4 years old. In the future she's going to be obviously a lot older. Maybe she'll be watching this when she's 20. and who knows if I'll be here or not. And I just thought it was really symbolic to come here and talk about Dragon Warrior and, you know, those fun memories, and talk about your childhood and all that, and how everything is a fleeting moment and it goes by so quickly, and you have to hold on. You have to hold on to your memories, and you have to hold on to your past because it really guides your future. And I'm always really looking to the past to guide me in the future, and it gives me a lot of passion. Here I am 35 years later, going back to my old high school and going back to my old neighborhood to see all of those amazing experiences that I had back then, and it really, really means a lot to me. And hopefully you guys can, get something out of this. I think a lot of you have the same kind of experience that I have doing this, right? I mean, a lot of you have memories of when you were growing up and video games and things like that. And maybe some of you have forgotten, and maybe this video will jar some of those memories for you. Video games are all just, chips and electronics, they're made by humans, but they are soulless by design. But it's the human being that adds the soul to them, that makes them something more and something tangible and something that you can be thinking about 35 years later, and that can mean a great deal in your life. And it's meant a great deal in mine. Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest has really meant something to me. And I just wanted to share it today with you guys. So anyways, guys, until next time.